Welcome to the Divine Hangout. I'm your host, Hillary Jubilee. It is my intention that when you listen to this podcast, you experience an increase in peace, abundance, and divine miracles in your life experience. If you love all things spirituality, wellness, healing, manifestation, and miracles, you are in the exact right place at the exact right time. Let's enter the portal together. Welcome back to the Divine Hangout. It's Hillary, and we're back with another episode. Today's episode, I'm going to read a bit of this amazing magical book. It's called A Course in Mastering Alchemy by Jim Self and Roxanne Burnett. And it has been described on the back of this book as a Course in Miracles for the 21st century. So it's a little bit more accessible kind of A Course in Miracles. If you don't know what A Course in Miracles is, it's a spiritual text that was channeled by Jesus. It does come, it's not a religion. It does come in a very religious wording, and it's very wordy and kind of hard to understand sometimes. And it's a massive text, which I do the workbook portions in the lessons, daily lessons for a year. I'm doing those lessons on YouTube and on my podcast. If you check those out, if you're interested in A Course in Miracles, it's kind of just like if you're drawn to it, it will make itself known to you. It's a little bit of it's just like one spiritual path, and some people are drawn to it, some people aren't, and that's okay. And you know, there are many paths. So A Course in Mastering Alchemy is another amazing path. And I'm gonna explain lesson number 11, which is the 7 layers of thought. And yeah, so let's read the little intro before we talk about what those 7 layers of thought are. So the difference between success and struggle is the degree to which we are aware of and manage our intention, attention, and thoughts. Your unconscious thinking creates just as powerfully and swiftly as your conscious thinking does. Unconscious thoughts are like misguided darts, whereas intentionally directed thoughts result in precise outcomes. Understanding the levels your thoughts transition through will prove helpful in managing them. The thoughts occur at many levels of loudness, from the screaming, arguing thought that bursts out of your mouth without warning to the complete silence of knowingness. Although there are many levels or layers of thought, let's just keep it simple and talk about the 7 distinct layers available to each of us. These layers do not have rigid lines of definition. There's actually a fluidity and flow between them. The flow from one layer of thought to the next is similar to the way the colors of a rainbow blend into one another. For example, the red layer flows into the orange layer with no rigid line separating the two colors. Okay, so it's talking about basically another word for it, like when we get into the lessons, or not the lessons. This is lesson number 11. When we get into the layers, it's kind of like levels of consciousness and or thought. But so the first layer is where we speak without considering what we're saying. So similar to a man in the airport just blurting out meaningless comments, the woman chattering away as if she has no filter. And seconds later, not even remembering what she said. Functioning in this layer of thought, a person is generally unconscious of being unconscious, goes about their day in a default mode versus being conscious and intentional. Most of those who have not awakened spiritually live in the first layer of thought, but even those who are more self-aware can still find themselves moving in and out of this layer of thought. You might make a project of becoming aware when you and others around you are in this layer. Notice the unnecessary comments, gossip, or noisy conversation. When you begin to become conscious of this layer of thought, it will quickly become uncomfortable in the unconscious babble that you may find yourself surrounded by or just demonstrating. When you're conscious of the first layer of thought, you will make better choices about how to present yourself and the layer of thought in which you want to live. This layer of thought and the next 2 layers operate in 3rd dimensional past, future time. So I've definitely become aware of this and noticed it around. Like I notice when other people are gossiping, and I find it cringe, and I find it very sometimes I'm like, okay, I'm being judgmental of other people being judgmental, and I have to watch the spiritual ego and I have to be like aware of it, because it's like I'm seeing it over there, and then obviously it's still within me if I'm seeing it over there. So like forgiveness and love, and just letting it go at that, rather than getting down a rabbit hole, you know, of like judging myself or judging others, or even getting caught up in whatever it is. Like, yeah, so that's the first layer, is just like meaningless gossip and thinking without speaking and just unconsciousness. So the second layer is where you have conversations or arguments with people in your head. So definitely have been guilty of this in the past, but I'm definitely a lot more conscious of it these days. But you know, like if someone says something to you and then later you think of something that you would have liked to have said back to them, and then you're arguing with them in your head. That's what the second layer is talking about. Like you're going back and forth with somebody if you're not in a good place with somebody, and then you're arguing with them in your head. Yeah, that's the second layer. These thoughts can become very loud and consuming habits. This level of thought has a relationship to telepathy and clairaudience. That conversation you're having in your head is very real in the moment, and it is happening. Whether the person you are talking to is next to you or 1,000 miles away, the conversation is occurring. On an energetic level, that other person can feel the energy you're throwing at them. This is also the layer where you really want to curse at the person standing before you. You stupid person, idiot, jerk, but instead you smile pleasantly and continue to argue with them in your head. Like the first layer of thought, this one has a huge amount of internal motion to it. In both layers, you are still engaging with the situation versus listening and being still. Many long-held limiting habits of thought reside in this layer, and you may not even be aware of it. So what that's referring to there is like when you are going back and forth with somebody in your head, you know, everyone and everything is yourself pushed out, Neville Goddard concept, right? Which just means there is no out there. The world is, the 3D world is an illusion and a projection of the mind. So whether you're saying something to somebody out loud, or thinking about somebody in your head, or talking to somebody in your head, it's all energy and it's all real. Imagination is the only reality. So you're communicating with somebody else in your head, they're feeling that energy. So you always want to be putting out love and forgiveness and peace. Just what are you putting out? What energy are you putting out? If you're saying something unloving to somebody, even if it's in your mind, they're feeling that energy. And then not only are they feeling that energy, but that's the energy that you're going to get back to yourself as well. So just second layer of thought is arguing with other people in your head. So third layer of thought is where you figure things out, you strategize, you fix and problem solve. There's still motion here and an internal back and forth type of conversation, as well as a degree of engagement and emotional attachment. This layer is very involved in the rational mind's need to figure things out. I tried 3 different things and I know there has to be a solution. How can I troubleshoot this issue before the deadline? Okay, I said hello to her, but she didn't see me. What do I do now to get her attention? What does that sign over there say? It looks so interesting. Although not as loud and as intense as the first 2 layers, there's still undisciplined focus in this layer. It has more to do with figuring something out for yourself than engaging with somebody else. Your mind is bouncing around trying to find an answer. There's a looking outward and a compulsion to find the answer, rather than taking a breath, becoming quiet, and allowing that answer to make itself available to you. So you can see how it's kind of like a level of consciousness where you're just like mind chatter and, you know, finding out, trying to figure things out in the mind rather than being still. Okay, so those are the first 3. Fourth layer is a place that can be defined as pondering. It's being curious and sitting back without being engaged in the situation. This is the first non-engaged, non-invested layer of thought. This layer is curious. I wonder how that will unfold. Where did that come from? What an interesting possibility. There's no emotional attachment, judgment, or predefinition of answers or possibilities. Many times you get into this easy layer when you aren't stressed, or in a moment when you think, or when there are few external demands on you. You might begin to think, maybe it's time to consider moving. I wonder where I would like to live. This is a question without a defined answer to it. The question is open-ended. The answer appears where that non-charged question is asked. All you have to do is allow it and not move from your thought to search for the answer. The answer and the wandering thoughts around the answer then come into your awareness from a broader field of possibilities. well, if I go to Portland, Oregon, I will have this experience. If I go to Tokyo, I will have that experience. And then I could always move down to Perth in Australia and have another experience. The process unfolds by itself, and you are simply watching and allowing the process from a place of neutral curiosity from the center of your head or your higher mind. So this book, A Course in Mastering Alchemy, talks about being in the center of your head, which is just like literally you imagine a line in the middle of your head and the side of your head, and it's like right in the middle. And it's like keeping your awareness in the middle, and then there's a spot, your higher mind, where it's just like a bit higher above from that. And it's just like you're in just an observing place where you're not like in your 3D, you're kind of like more detached and more observational. So that's what that's referring to. You're not actively searching out an answer. In this layer of thought, someone may say to you, have you considered Boulder, Colorado? And you're open and allowing without rejecting or judging the possibility. No opinion, just curious. This is a present time, fourth dimensional consciousness. Okay, so that's fourth layer. And then the fifth is the layer of thoughts where things start to get creative and quiet. This is where your consciousness begins naturally and organically to pull together many of the floating, curious pieces, combining them with the deeper, unconscious aspects of you and organizing them in such a way that you become much more conscious, focused, and capable with your innate wisdom. This layer takes the curious interest of the fourth layer, the field of possibilities, and brings it to your mental workbench to organize and become more real as a possibility. This is done not with greater thought or concentration, but with a greater quietness, allowing stillness and trust. The answers come to where the question is considered. This is where I wonder where I would like to move unfolds into, yes, London feels aligned, right, and good, with no effort or worry or figuring it out, no thought. It's an awareness as if you heard the words but cannot define where they came from. So to me, fifth layer of thought is like intuition. It's saying the answer is kind of just, you don't know where it came from, but the answer just feels aligned and it came to you. Living in this layer of thought is magical, although it isn't magic. It is inspired. Many artists and writers create when in this layer. The creation process just flows, and the book or painting writes or paints itself. Many describe this state as being in the zone. Okay, the sixth layer of thought. Perhaps we should rename this layer the layer of no thought. This layer is similar to a great meditation where you find yourself easily sitting still for 3 hours in an awareness of, this is so good, I don't want to get up. This layer is an extremely quiet place where you begin to access deeper fields of awareness. You begin to think, or better yet, exist without thoughts as words. This is where thought enters the physical from the non-physical. This is where the rays of creation truly begin to be used to arrange and rearrange all possibilities without any limitations. Although no thought is thought in words, everything comes effortlessly to you as an understanding, a knowing. It is in this layer of thought that much of the work of this course is practiced. You begin to play in the fifth dimension where time, space, and gravity all operate differently than is understood in the third dimension. This is the place where alchemy occurs, where you begin to change the harmonics of matter, rearrange the frequencies of thought, and apply the element of love in such a manner that on your terms, you rearrange the molecules and instantaneously begin to produce in simultaneous time whatever you desire. Can you make that happen in this moment? Yes, but not if the noise of the first 3 layers of thought is your habit. As you play with the layers of thought and become more masterful, you will build more templates of clear awareness and create expanding platforms to stand upon and create from. These fifth and sixth layers are where you will live most of your day in greater balance and ease. From here, you can then do what is necessary to allow more light to enter into your body. It's in this space that you begin to know yourself as soul. Beautiful. And then the last layer, seventh layer of thought, is indefinable. There are no human words available to describe it. It's where you and the thought that thought you into existence think together. Now, If I were to skirt around the edges of that with some definitions, I could say that this layer is the place where you are in full relationship with your soul. This may be unimaginable to you. Your soul has everything to do with the creation of you. Creator created you, but your soul also created you. At this point, you will have physicality, but not a physical body as you know it. You will have a crystallized body that is less physically dense. The living light body is now becoming very available to each one of us, but in order to create it, expanded levels of light have to be brought into your form through the mental and emotional bodies. Those two bodies hold third dimensional density, resistance, and resentment. This is where ugly thoughts and ugly emotions live. The predominant purpose of this course is for you to become conscious of being conscious and aware of being aware, integrating enough light into your mental and emotional bodies to the point where you don't have those ugly thoughts and ugly emotions, reactions, and resistances. When you can clear that energy from your emotional and mental bodies, they will merge and become one just as they originally were intended. When this happens, you will begin to play with the great awareness in the 5th, 6th, and 7th layers of thought. You will begin to change the density of your physicality from a carbon-dense body that does not absorb light to a crystalline body of light that will allow a very significant transformation of your physical body. This is what happens. This is what begins to happen in the 7th layer of thought, but what I just described doesn't adequately express what is possible. There are no words, although we are getting closer to finding them. In the meantime, I hope this gives you a better sense of these layers of thought and a structure that will enable you to become more aware of your inner workings. As you become the quiet observer of your thoughts and patterns, the noise will lessen and a stillness of understanding and knowingness will prevail. And that is precisely where humanity is headed. Beautiful. So those are the 7 layers of thought from lesson number 11 of A Course in Mastering Alchemy, which is A Course in Miracles for the 21st century. I just love those layers of thought. It's so accessible. Like, you can really think. You can notice when yourself or when somebody else, you notice somebody else in an unconscious state when they're just like blabbing about whatever negativity or judgments. And then the 2nd layer where you're arguing with somebody in your head, like, it's so relatable. The 3rd layer where you're like trying to figure things out in your mind. And then the 4th layer is like a little bit more chill and calm where you're just like curious and detached. And then the 5th layer where you're like in flow, in creation zone. It's more like intuition is coming through. You're in receiving mode, as Abraham Hicks would say. And then the 6th is like meditation consciousness. And then the 7th is a little bit indefinable. It's like past the point of a good meditation, it seems. You're like one with the creator. So a higher level than meditation. So yeah, I just want to share those 7 layers of thought. Hopefully you can become aware if you have slipped into one of the first 3 and get yourself centered in the center of your head and just become a little bit more aware and detached. I love you so much. Thank you for watching. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Give me a 5-star review on the podcast if you're listening on the podcast. And I will see you tomorrow. Okay, bye.